There are so many things pending in our world right now that really deserve our attention, but I felt like I absolutely would be failing you if I did not talk to you today about one sphere of conflict that is going on in our world that is probably the most dangerous of all right now. Furthermore, there is a prophecy in the Bible that foretells a war to come. Actually, it will be the world's greatest ever war. So we need to talk about it today. Let's go to Revelation chapter number 9, verse 13 through 16. This particular prophecy deals with the sixth trumpet war. There are 7 seals, 7 trumpets, and 7 vials in the book of Revelation. Well, this is the 6th trumpet. Just listen to the text. Revelation 9:13. Then the 6th angel sounded, and I heard a voice from the 4 horns of the golden altar, which is before God, saying to the 6th angel who had the trumpet, release the 4 angels who are bound at the great river Euphrates. So the 4 angels who had been prepared for the hour and day and month and year were released to kill 1/3 of mankind. Now the number of the army of the horsemen was 200 million. I heard the number of them. Every time I read this particular prophecy, I sort of sink down into my shoes because the potential of it is so horrendous. But just to go back and sort of recap what the prophecy says, it states there are 4 angels bound in the river Euphrates. The Bible tells us that angels are spirits. The Euphrates River starts in Turkey, runs down through Syria, down through Iraq, and then finally the last 60 miles, it serves as the border between Iraq and Iran before emptying into the Persian Gulf. So there are 4 nations that house the Euphrates. The Bible tells us that these angels are bound in the Euphrates River. I do not know whether the fact there are 4 angels correlates to the 4 nations that house the Euphrates River or not. It's a good possibility. But this does appear to teach us that this coming war, the war that will kill 1/3 of mankind. Now that's what's so staggering about this prophecy. 1/3 of mankind. We presently have about 7.5 billion people on earth. That means 2.5 billion would be killed if the war happened today. Now think about it for a moment, because I don't want these things just to be figures in your mind. We know that in World War I, there were 8.2 million killed. World War II, 20 years or so later, we had 52 million killed. But this war is going to have 2.5 billion. We're talking 40 times World War II. Now, I don't like to talk about this prophecy, but I would fail you if I didn't talk about it. Furthermore, the first 5 trumpets have already sounded. If you have an interest in understanding the entire prophecy about the 7 trumpets, so this prophecy says these 4 angels are bound in the great Euphrates River, and they're prepared for a specific hour, day, month, and year, for a specific time. And when this war is unleashed, the result will be the killing of 1/3 of mankind. Then it states that the number of the horsemen involved in this war will be 200 million. Mao Zedong, before he died, boasted in his diary that he could field an army of 200 million soldiers. Then the Islamic powers now have a population that would allow them to field an army of 200 million soldiers. Stay with us. As soon as you say end time, they say, whoa, the end of the world. When's it going to be? And you can see this mask of fear. not telling you the end time is coming. I'm telling you, you live in it right now. Daniel chapter number 7, verse number 4. The first beast was like a lion. We have the eagle used continually to depict the United States of America. You see it on governmental We are the generation for which these that you will not miss one segment of understanding the end time, because I've had many people tell me it's changed their life forever. Many of the major prophecies of the Bible are given to us 2, 3, some of them as high as 4 or 5 times. There is not any chance it's not going to happen, because it's in your Bible, it's prophesied, and the prophecies always coming back. Now, this prophesied war found in the book of Revelation, chapter number 9, verse 13 through 16, could actually happen at any moment, since the first 5 trumpets have already blown. Now, I cannot tell you exactly when. I can tell you that this war must take place before the beginning of the Great Tribulation, which happens during the final 3.5 years immediately preceding the Battle of Armageddon. This is not the Battle of Armageddon. It is a separate war. Now, why would I think we could be on the brink of this war right now? Well, it's because Iran, Russia, China, and Turkey are all rejoicing because of the recent trials and tribulations that the United States of America is experiencing. Now, first of all, though, I want to take you to an article. This article is entitled, "The IAEA Voices Serious Concern Over Blocked Access to Certain Iranian Sites." This comes from Pass Blue, which is an independent voice about the United Nations. This was June the 8th this year. The International Atomic Energy Agency issued an alarming report on June 5th, voicing serious concern over Iran's refusal to allow the agency's inspectors to investigate 2 sites where the country is suspected of having conducted undeclared nuclear activities in the past. The confidential report, which was sent to IAEA member states — IAEA stands for International Atomic Energy Agency — this report states on June the 5th, and seen by Pass Blue, details suspected nuclear material and activities at 3 sites in Iran where the material is thought to have been situated. The report is the second of its kind. The first was published in March of 2020. In the report, the agency is asking for access to 2 of the 3 sites noted above, and it expresses serious concern that for more than 4 months, Iran has denied access to the agency to 2 locations. And for almost a year has not engaged in substantive discussions to clarify agency questions. Now, let's make this clear. The IAEA is supposed to go into Iran and inspect its military sites every 3 to 4 months. And the International Atomic Energy Agency for the United Nations is supposed to give Iran a clear report. Yes, they are complying with the 2015 treaty. Well, now all of a sudden, Iran is stonewalling and not allowing them to look at certain sites. This is causing tremendous alarm because Iran may be trying to obtain a nuclear weapon. Now, Prime Minister Netanyahu said that the coronavirus pandemic will not deter the nation of Israel from keeping nukes out of Iran's hands. This comes from Israel Hayam, just the 7th of June. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu reiterated Sunday that Israel would not let Iran attain atomic weapons. Discussing Iran's reported continued violations of the 2015 nuclear deal during the weekly cabinet meeting, Netanyahu said, over the weekend, Iran refused to grant International Atomic Energy Agency inspectors access to its secret sites. Coronavirus does not reduce our determination one bit to act against Iran's aggression, he added. Now, consider this. The United States has also declared that we will never allow Iran to have a nuclear weapon. And yet it appears that Iran is attempting to develop more and more uranium. We're going to see in a little bit that she has right now 7 times as much as she is supposed to have under the treaty that she signed. Before we go there, however, I want to go to another article from the Jerusalem Post on the 2nd of this month. It's entitled, Iran, Russia, China, Turkey Celebrate Collapse of the United States. Authoritarian regimes throughout the world are pushing narratives that appear to gloat over and celebrate the chaos unfolding in the United States. On Monday, Iran's media pushed stories that highlighted the, quote, collapse, while quoting Russian sources portraying that the U.S. is flailing about as its world order comes crashing down. The U.S. became the world's most powerful country, a global hegemonic superpower, after the Soviet Union and its client states fell apart in 1989. However, Russia, China, Iran, and increasingly Turkey have all awaited the period when the world would become multipolar again. They have sought to work more closely together, and they have sat frequently at global forums that the U.S. does not attend. To coordinate efforts against the U.S., these countries all have state media that is well funded, such as RT, which is the Russian Times, TRT, the Tehran Times, Iran's Tasnim and Fars News, and numerous Chinese media outlets. The policies of these countries are to slowly undermine the U.S. and wait for moments of U.S. weakness to push their agendas. The leadership in Turkey and Iran view their goal as undermining the U.S. through a more religious lens linked with Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps and Muslim Brotherhood that influences Tehran and Ankara, respectively. Turkey's Recep Erdogan sought to capitalize on the recent riots in the U.S., claiming that America is part of an unjust order in the world. Another article entitled Russian Vote on Allowing Putin to Serve Until 2036 to take place July the 1st. Russia will hold a nationwide vote on constitutional reforms on July the 1st, President Vladimir Putin said on Monday, setting the stage for a delayed ballot that could extend his rule until 2036. The changes that Russians will vote on, already approved by Parliament and Russia's Constitutional Court, would reset Putin's presidential term tally to 0, allowing him to serve 2 more back-to-back 6-year terms until 2036 if reelected. Now think about this for a minute. Here you have Vladimir Putin, who is the leader of Russia. Russia possesses as many nuclear weapons as any other power on earth. And now then, China's president, Xi Jinping, has been named China's leader for life. So now you have 2 of the 3 greatest nuclear powers having installed their leaders for the foreseeable future. Vladimir Putin till 2036, Xi Jinping for life. Now, long-term leaders like this many times hold power during times of world war. We saw that back during World War II. So this is alarming within itself. Another article you have to hear from because of the particular dangerous time we're living in. U.S. would lose a war with China fought in the Pacific, Pentagon sources warn. Now, this comes from the Daily Mail, and I think it also was published in the Washington Times. Eye-opening Pentagon war games revealed the U.S. is vulnerable to China, and an attack from the superpower would lead to the U.S. suffering capital losses. U.S. defense sources told that one Pentagon simulation based on the year 2030 resulted in the U.S. being overwhelmed by the nation's force. Now, remember, these simulations were based as though we were at 2030. We're only at 2020 right now. Nevertheless, listen to the message. Every U.S. base in the Indo-Pacific Command region is considered to be at risk of attack now, with the U.S. island territory Guam a particular concern. Taiwan is the most volatile issue between the 2 nations, sources said. A source said the Pentagon is developing more hypersonic weapons and arming Marine units along China's seas with anti-ship missiles in preparation. Tensions between the U.S. have escalated, between China and the U.S. have escalated in recent months as the coronavirus pandemic has ravaged the globe. Now, let's make sure we don't underplay this, because the tensions have escalated as a result of the coronavirus. President Trump has stated that China knew about this virus a month or 2 before they finally warned the world of it. And furthermore, they allowed their citizens to fly from Wuhan into Europe and into America, and thus they become responsible for hundreds of thousands of deaths as a result of this. All of this is ratcheting up the tensions. Now, don't even mention the negotiations, the trade negotiations between the United States and China. The stark warning comes as tensions continue to mount between the 2 nations after U.S. President Donald Trump has blasted China's handling of the coronavirus pandemic and repeatedly suggested the nation lied about the extent of its crisis. The threat is more immediate than 2030, however, with every U.S. base in the Indo-Pacific Command region considered to be at risk of attack now because China has ramped up its supply of medium-range ballistic missiles. The U.S. island territory Guam, home to 3 U.S. military bases, is a particularly concern the games revealed. China has long-range anti-ship ballistic missiles and hypersonic more than 5 times the speed of sound missiles, one U.S. defense source told the Washington Times. Bonnie Glaser, director of the China Power Project at the Center for Strategic and International Studies in Washington, and a consultant for the U.S. government on East Asia, told the Times that Taiwan is the most volatile issue between the two nations and fears tensions could erupt in a nuclear war. Taiwan has increasingly found itself caught in the middle of the political games between the two superpowers. Every simulation that has been conducted looking at the threat from China by 2030 have all ended up with the defeat of the U.S., said Glaser. Taiwan is the most volatile issue because that could escalate to a war with the U.S., even to a nuclear war. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure you see why I'm bringing this to you today. It is alarming, and furthermore, China has been moving ahead by leaps and bounds ever since 1979. Their economy has grown by an average of 10% per year over the last, what's it been, 79, be almost 40 years. What have they been doing with all that money? They have been buying military equipment. They have been building huge ships. They've been developing their nuclear arsenal. All of this is taking place over the last 40 years. And for a long time, America was sort of asleep at the wheel because we didn't see China as a threat. She had been so backward in her development, but no more. Now then, China is moving ahead by leaps and bounds, and many people have threatened that China will actually dominate the 21st century that we find ourselves in right now. It has long been talked among global prognosticators that the 21st century will be the Chinese century. Well, now all of a sudden, Donald Trump comes along and says, wait a minute, the reason you're moving ahead so fast is because our presidents have signed so many unfair trade deals with you, and you have been operating a surplus of $600 billion a year in your trade with the U.S. No more. We're stopping that. And if you refuse to trade fair with us, then we will place you under sanctions. Now then, President Trump is saying we've got to bring our manufacturing back into America because during the coronavirus, we found out that we were dependent on China for masks, for nurse robes, for medicine, for almost everything we needed. And Trump says we're bringing all that back home, which means that revenue will be staying here instead of going to China. Well, China very much resents this. Plus, they resent America blaming the coronavirus spread on China. All this boiling together, plus the dispute over Taiwan, creates a very dangerous situation indeed. I read just before I walked in here today that one of our planes, our military planes, flew over Taiwan with permission. But our plane was followed by 4 Chinese fighter planes into Taiwanese air territory without permission. Taiwan warned China about it. They then turned and left. So that shows you how dangerous this is. The 6th trumpet war is going to happen. The prophecies always come to pass.